My name is Mark Schwab. I am the managing partner of Diamond in the Rough Films, LLC. Recently, I just completed writing, producing, and directing a feature film called Shadows in Mind, which is an LGBT thriller, which is going to start coming out there in 2018.
I've been here for a week, and all I've done is look at my watch while they whine about how hard it is to find a nice boyfriend, or that their boss doesn't appreciate all the hard work they do. It's complaining. It sure as hell isn't crisis.
You volunteered to be helpful, not entertained.
LGBT Crisis Hotline, Simon speaking.
I need to talk to someone.
He's young, he's alone. My gut says he doesn't have a criminal record.
Tell me what's going on with you.
That's complicated.
Why is Danny terrified?
Danny, you stop caring what other people think.
Are you freaked out?
Yeah.
And start having fun. Unabashedly. Unashamedly. You are in for the ride of your life, and we are the perfect people to strap you in fourth.
I'm nervous. It's why I have to kill them.
If you had to use one line you have written to describe the artist you started out as, what would that line be?
One line I would say that that comes to mind would be from a short film I did called Thin Places, where one character is being interrogated and he says, "I've got more questions than answers." And that, when I first started doing, real films, I certainly had a lot of questions. Where do I put the camera? What's the story we're going to tell? How do we fit the camera and get decent recording sound on a camcorder in 30-mile-an-hour winds? So I would say that sums up a lot of where I started as an artist. I've got more questions than answers. So from Thin Places, my short film.
Near the end of a project, what is the emotion you find yourself more often feeling? And how long does it typically last?
There's kind of two sides to that a little bit. When you say near the end of a project, there's the end of principal photography, there's the end of editing, post-production, and the first emotion that comes up is, oh my God, there's so much work left to do. Back in the day, when we were shooting on, super 16mm film, you send in your EDL list and the neg was cut and you were done. You had nothing to think about. Now, now it's so different. Now you've got, I finished principal photography on this film on August 21st on Shadows in Mind. And then me and Mark Ballounis basically completed editing the film on, let's say, November 20th or so. And now I have to make it into I have to come up with all these deliverables, for distributors. You got to get an Apple ProRes file. You've got to have a soundtrack file. You got to have a titles file. You got to, you got to have an electronic press kit. You got to have different artwork. You got to have behind the scenes stills, and the list goes on and on. So it seems like it's never ending.
Dealing with critics, you've always found it better to what?
Take all of them with a huge grain of salt. I can't believe how varying critics have been with our work, and it's probably not unique to us. I've had critics say this one actor was brilliant, and another critic say this actor was terrible. You just never, or they're awful. So just take it all with a grain of salt, really. I think if you get enough critical feedback, which it's very difficult for independent films to get critical feedback. That's why Diamond in the Rough Films offers that as a service. we'll review your movie and give you feedback. And it's just very, very hard to get anybody to look at your movie at all. So I guess if you get 10 decently written reviews and 8 of them mention something, it might be worth looking at, maybe. But we've never had massive amounts of critics look at our work, so they've been all over the place. And most critics, there's not a lot of good ones out there.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them are pretty lazy. But I know we really try and write thoughtful reviews. We watch them completely and try and offer something that's really objective and hopefully helpful. I mean, we don't want to just trash something or just. We also don't want to do softballs. There's definitely critics up there that'll just praise everything because they know that filmmakers will keep sending them stuff and they'll keep making money. I mean, and we don't think that's helpful. I mean, we don't want to be discouraging, but we don't want to be falsely encouraging either. So with critics, take it all with a grain of salt, except for me because I'm exactly right. So
you were a mad scientist and could actually bring one of your characters to life. Who would that be and why?
Gosh, I write a lot of dark stuff. I mean, most of my characters are not very likable. It's just kind of what I dig into.
And you tend to go on the real side of things too. So you write real people for the most part. I mean, they do weird things, but they're pretty much real people.
Yeah, I don't really go into the fantastic or anything like that. I guess if I had to pick one character, it might be Danny from Shadows of Mind, only because I could steer him away from the trouble he ends up getting into. I would certainly want to do that. Danny's a character that, in the film, he's alone. He doesn't have any positive influences on him, and so I guess I would do that so I could be a genuine friend to him. That just to kind of guide him away from that stuff, maybe.
Leaving the playing field where you never had to be concerned about money, time, resources. Give us one way in which you would be the same artist you are right now, and one way in which you would be vastly different.
Well, one way I would definitely be the same is I think I would be attracted to the same material that I like, which is, tends to be cautionary type tales dealing with a lot of times with sexual hang-ups and people's inner conflict with themselves. That's the stuff I like to get into. I also wouldn't change my work ethic, that's for sure. The way I work, I don't think would change that much. The way I handle actors, the way I handle a crew. The biggest thing no question, the biggest thing that would be different is I'd actually hire people instead of doing all the work myself.
Right.
On Shadows in Mind, here I am. I'm a co-editor of the film. I did all the sound mixing. I did the color grading of all of it. I mean, I've done the electronic. I mean, I've done way too much, and that's a necessity. It's not. I'm definitely not a control freak by any means. I mean, I would love to spend money and hire people. Give some jobs. I mean, my God, this is purely just out of necessity. So that would be the biggest change. Was I would be hiring everybody all over the place and paying them well and giving them opportunity.
And thank you, Mark, for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. More than happy to do it, Joe. It's great to be on Go Indie Now. Like I said, I love your questions. I love what you do for independent artists and writers. And I can't wait for you to see the film, and let's talk about it again on air.
Okay.
Let's do this again. And,
sounds good, man.
I'll get you that link ASAP. I can't believe I didn't do that.
Yeah, we'll sit down and have a much more in-depth conversation. And have you explored the 4K transfer yet? Are you guys into that yet, or is that something that is still a little bit further down the road, you feel?
The 4K transfer? Well, it depends. A lot of it is once we're talking with a couple of distributors right now that have definitely expressed interest. A lot of it will depend on what they'll want. And I'm sure that they're going to think of things that we haven't even thought of. I mean, there's some basic things that we know we need to deliver. Like we know there needs to be a ProRes file. It seems like every distributor wants that. So we can prepare that. We got to have a DCP. Film festivals almost exclusively now are showing DCP files. So we got to get that set up. They all require artwork. They all require behind the scenes photos and stuff. So as far as a 4K transfer, I mean, if someone tells us that, if a distributor says, hey, we need a 4K transfer, we'll consider that. Or we might tell them, great, how are you going to pay for that? Send us a check, or just arrange for that to be done, and we'll do it. So, but I mean, our film was shot on a Red Dragon in 5K basically. So I mean, we could do a 4K transfer, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think that's a huge deal. Even movie theaters, all you really need is a 2K transfer to show in a movie theater. So unless we were showing in the Dolby Labs, I don't know if that would really make a big difference. Like I said, if they want to pay for it, great, all for it. But I don't know if that's high on our priority list right now.
Do standard distribution deals include something like that into the process, or do they kind of try to stick it to you?
Oh, they'll try and stick you with everything. I mean, if it's up to them, sure. A lot of it depends on. That's kind of why there are certain film festivals we're entering, because if we can, if there's a great crowd and we get really good reviews, that gives us a little stronger bargaining position. But I don't think there's any real normal deal. I don't think that exists anymore. There's nothing standard anymore. So yeah, but of course they'd rather you pay for everything if it was up to them. Sure. Hell yeah.